Hello, everybody. My name is Kelly Rummel. I am a teacher of over a decade here in the Detroit area. I've worked with all sorts of students from pre-K through my oldest student was 55 years old. I received my master's degree as a reading specialist from the University of Michigan and just thought I knew everything about reading until my second son was struggling learning to read, and I figured through a lot of trial and error that he's dyslexic. So what I knew was not working for my dyslexic son, and I had to relearn how to teach reading all over again. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the things that we do when we are working with children, either in schools or on a one-on-one tutoring session, and what you can do with your rising reader to help them get the tools that they need to climb this ladder of reading. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you. This ladder of reading was essentially created by a researcher, Dr. Nancy Young. And what she had found is through her research that about 40%, you see this green area up here, 40% of children can learn to read relatively easy with just about any kind of instruction. And with about 5% of kids, it almost seems effortless. These are kids that just pick up the code and learn to read when they're like 3 and 4, and you don't have to work with them very much, and they quickly pick up how to read. However, between 40 and 50% in this orange zone here, learning to read proficiently requires a code-based, explicit, systematic, and sequential instruction. And that's the kind of instruction that I had to learn how to do with my own son. And now we do this all the time through brain-friendly reading. And I'm going to teach you some of those skills that we use in our system tonight. And about 10 to 15%, some even think up to 20% of our population are dyslexic. And so that learning to read proficiently absolutely needs this code-based, explicit, systematic, sequential, and diagnostic instruction. And I want to emphasize this with many repetitions. And we're going to talk more about this many repetitions later and what that can look like. So before we get started with the what, I'm just going to give you a tiny little background on the why we do things the way we do. This is just an image, obviously, of the brain architecture required for reading. One of the terms used is called the science of reading. And it's based on this research that basically when we learn to read, what we have to do is we have to go from a visual input of looking at a letter to accessing what that letter's sound is, to putting those sounds together, and then realizing that that sounds all together, like at means cat, and we have to access the meaning to that. And so our brains do this in, milliseconds, right? But we need to train the brain how to do this because brains were not naturally wired to learn how to read. We are wired to communicate with each other, but reading and writing is a man-based system that some brains do not acquire naturally, and we need to explicitly teach our brains how to do this process. So here's another example of what our brains are doing. When this young boy thinks the word duck, he has to hear the 3 sounds, d, k, that make up the word duck, and then you have to match it to that graphic letter representation as you write and as we read. One of the most important researchers out there for the science of reading, his name is Professor Stanislas Dehaene, and I think I'm saying that correct. I always butcher it. He is the author of How the Brain Learns to Read, and you can find all sorts of information out there about him on the internet. He's got lots of YouTube videos, but his books can be really intense. But basically, here's what we can take away from this. That reading in all cultures relies on the same brain mechanisms. Reading requires specializing the visual system for the shapes of letters and connecting them to speech sounds. Teaching letter-sound correspondence is essential. Brain research converges with education research. Teaching letter-sound correspondences is the fastest way to acquire reading and comprehension. Once these correspondences are learned, self-teaching can occur. Children decipher words, recognize them auditorily, and access their meaning. This develops a second direct route from vision to meaning. So basically, the one thing that I want you to take away from this thing is basically where he says that teaching the letter sound correspondences is the fastest way to acquire reading and comprehension. Also, it's great to know, just to have in your back pocket, that reading, being a skilled reader over here on this right side, requires many, many, many different skills tied together, almost like a rope, in order to become this skilled reader. So what does that consist of? It consists of word recognition and language comprehension. Now, you'll hear a lot of teachers talk to you about like, oh, all you have to do is make sure that you read to your children, read a lot to your children, they need that. And they definitely need that, because if you look at this, part of that is literacy knowledge, which we give to our children as we sit and we read with them. They also get vocabulary as you're reading new and different stories. They can learn new words. They learn background knowledge. They learn all sorts of things as we read to them. However, we need to be a little bit more explicit with our word recognition. These three skills down here need to be explicitly taught. Now, especially for those ones that were in the orange and the red zone that we talked about in that ladder of reading, they need a lot more explicit and direct instruction in those areas. So we're going to focus on that tonight. We want to make sure that we are developing phonemic awareness and the sound symbol connection. So how do we do that with brain-friendly reading? The first thing we do is called chart tapping, and I'm going to teach you how to do that tonight. We also do something called sound dictation. And another strong piece that we do is called arm spelling. We're not going to get to that tonight. I'm going to let Christy teach you all about that tomorrow night, but that is such a key piece of raising strong readers and writers, is this arm spelling piece. But what I want to focus on with you tonight is this letter sound connection, or it's also sometimes referred to as the alphabetic principle. We want to make sure that as we are teaching this is something that becomes automatic, that the second a child sees that letter A, they say A, or G, they say G, etc. So we teach it explicitly over and over and over again. Now, here's some of the benefits of chart tapping. It's multisensory, which means you're just using many different senses. So you're seeing it, you're hearing it, they're saying it, they're doing it, and we do it in a rhythm. Why? Because our brains just like rhythm. We learn easier when things are in rhythm or to music. So we like to keep a steady beat as we're doing the chart tapping. This also reduces their anxiety because it's expected in routine. So if you have a child who, let's say, is a kindergartner, first grader, and they're just kind of struggling and they keep being thrown letters and books, it can cause a lot of anxiety, right? And so doing something as simple as chart tapping that is routine for them reduces their anxiety because it's very expected. It enables them to be successful and see their progress. So if you look at this picture here, this was an old chart that we had, but this child, we had covered the squares that they had not yet mastered, and they were able to color in the squares that they had mastered. So they could visually see the progress that they had made. And then they could see the ones at the bottom that they were working on, the ones that they hadn't yet colored and they were still working on. We're able to scaffold or layer skills across instructional settings. It provides for overlearning, and it's also a mnemonic device. So I put in the chat a link to this chart. This is our kindergarten chart. And I'm just going to teach you about that tonight. Our kindergarten chart is a little bit different. It's not alphabetical. And there's a really good reason for this, because we really just teach one line or strip of the chart at a time. So if you have a brand new preschooler, kindergartner who is not very strong yet in letters, recognizing letters, I would suggest that you just teach this one strip at a time until they become very successful and proficient with that one strip. And then you can move on to the second line or the second strip and go from there. It is very intentional why we didn't put these in order. I could go into greater detail with it, but it works so that we can start building words right away with the letters and vowels that they have mastered right away without having to know the entire thing. So we have some YouTube videos to show you on what it looks like to tap the chart. This is an awesome video of Christy doing this with her son at home. And so if you just want to follow along or listen some of these and listen carefully to what these keywords are, because some of them can be a little confusing. There may be some that you have never heard before, because every time I teach this to a parent, they go, oh, I didn't know about that one. And basically the process goes like this. You have your chart, and what you're going to do is you're going to tap the letter, you tap the keyword, and then you say the sound. So it looks like A, apple, A.
All right, we're going to tap the kindergarten chart. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. A, apple, A.
A, apple, A.
M, map,
M, map,
T, tiger, T.
T, tiger, T.
S, sun, S.
S, sun, S.
F, fish,
F, fish.
D, duck, D.
D, duck, D.
G, goat, G.
G, goat, G.
I, itch, I.
I, itch, I.
N, net, N.
N, net, N.
L, lion, ol.
L, lion, O.
B, bat, B.
B, bat, B.
H, hat,
H, hat.
C, cat, K.
C, cat, K.
R, robot, R,
robot,
O, octopus, A.
O, octopus, A.
J, jar, J.
J, jar, J.
P, pizza, P.
P, pizza, P.
Y, yarn, Y.
Y, yarn, Y.
W, web, W.
W, web,
Z, zigzag, Z.
Z, zigzag, Z.
S, rose, Z.
S, rose, Z.
U, up, A.
U, up, A.
V, van, V.
V, van, V.
C, K, sock, K.
C, K, sock, K.
X, box, X.
X, box, X.
Q, U, queen, Q.
Q, U, queen, Q.
F, F,
F, F.
L, L, O.
L, O, O.
S, S, S.
S, S, S.
Z, Z, Z.
Z, Z, Z.
E, edge, E.
E, edge, E.
C, H, chair, ch.
C, H, chair, ch.
S, H, ship, sh.
S, H, ship, sh.
T, H, thumb,
T, H, thumb.
T, H, them,
T, H, them, v.
W, H, whale, w.
W, H, whale,
I, N, G, ing.
I-N-G, ing.
I-N-K, ink.
I-N-K, ink.
Y, fly, I.
Y, fly, I.
Y, baby, E.
Y, baby, E.
I just wanted to point out a couple things on this chart that may be new and confusing. So first of all, you can see some of the keywords are a little bit different, like E for edge. And I just want to point out that every chart that you see, whether it's at the dollar store or Target or whatever, they are not all created equal. And sometimes they will have a picture that does not match the sound that the letter makes. For example, in many alphabets, you'll see xylophone for X, and X does not make the Z sound, even though that word does begin with the letter X. You do have some of the sounds here for the end of the word. X makes like a KS sound, so it's X. And our chart, another thing that may be new and different for you is having Q and U together and not just separated. Because we teach the kids right from the start, Q and U are never apart, they always stay together. Another thing that may be new for you is this TH digraph here. TH has two different sounds. The first is th for thumb, and the second is we don't change our mouth at all. We make the exact same mouth formation, but it's for them. So, and you get that more vibration in there. And we point those out to the kids. So you'll see that not only are we teaching just the basic letter sound correspondences, but also we're getting into some of these endings, the double F, L, S, and Z, and a few of these beginning H brothers or digraphs, as we call them. The last thing that I wanted to mention as you do these charts is to be mindful of eliminating some of the uhs that can be said at the end of a letter. For example, or your child may say T, tiger, t. And we just want to make sure that we're giving them the correct sound of t. They may also say something like v for van, which is very common. Just correcting them by saying, listen to me, and just saying v, van, v. Now, the greatest thing is we have this tapping chart on the YouTube channel that I just showed you. And so you can just pull up this video with your own child and you can do call and response together. Now, the great thing is after you do a call and response for a little while, the kids are feeling confident enough to go ahead and do it on their own. And then they're going to want to do it faster. And that's great because we're really trying to train their brain, right, to connect that letter sound correspondence as quickly as possible. Remember when we were looking at that ladder of reading and we were saying that the dyslexic students need many repetitions? And so I just want to show you exactly how many repetitions I'm talking about, because practice does make permanent. And even when you're a professional, like a basketball player, you don't stop practicing, even though you're a professional, right? So I want to point out to you that if you have a gifted student, they may only need 1 to 4 repetitions with a work before it's stored in their long-term memory. For a typical student or typical child, it takes between 4 and 14 repetitions of the same work before that goes into long-term memory. If you have a struggling child, maybe it's going to be 14 to about 40 times for repetition. And for a dyslexic child, that could be 40 to 200 times before doing that one thing becomes permanent in their long-term memory. I also wanted to point out to you that beyond a kindergarten chart, our brain-friendly reading curriculum does come with many other different charts. After we move on, we have a regular chart that is this first chart here that has a couple more endings here, the short vowels. We have a second chart, vowel teams chart, and a blends chart as well. And those can all be found if you're interested in that and have maybe a student in first, second, or third grade and want to continue on with the chart tapping. You can find those on our website, Brain Friendly Reading, in our shop as well. So the second thing that I wanted to share with you tonight is something called sound dictation. And this is the next process after chart tapping. Is what you do is you say the sound. So I would say k. The child would repeat the sound and say k, because I'm checking to make sure that they hear it correctly. And then the child would go ahead and write the letter while they say the sound. So here's my little whiteboard here, and the child would say k, k, like this. Okay. If your child's like, I'm not sure what it could be, go ahead and point to the chart and say, remember, it's for cat, right? One of the ways that we can make this multisensory is using a salt tray. You can use shaving cream. You can use a whiteboard. You can use chalk on a chalkboard. It doesn't matter. And we teach the child explicitly how to make the shape of each letter. I'm going to talk to you about that in just a little bit. So this is kind of like we're doing the opposite of looking at the letter. This time what we're doing is giving the sound and then creating it. Because one of the things that children can get really stuck up on is they start progressing from reading to writing is they'll know the sound of something, but have to search in their mind, what does that shape look like and how do I draw it? And it hasn't been automatic for them to say, if I say ah, they immediately go ah and make the letter O. That's what we want them to be able to do. So I'm going to show you this little video here. You can watch this child. She's working on blends here, but you can see what's going on here. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on.
Oh.
Say it together.
Awesome. All right, here's another one. Ready? Burr.
Burr. Burr.
It's the first
How do I
sound.
do burr again?
Can you think of it in your?
What's the first sound in burr?
Burr. Okay.
And say it when you write it.
Burr.
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 Okay, next one.
Let me do one more of
Okay.
these. Burr. Too big.
B.
Burr.
B.
What is
It's
happening?
okay.
Okay. Burr.
B.
Burr. Burr.
And this just says B. This says B. Can you trace that and say B? B. B.
Burr.
Watch what I do. B. And then underline it or circle it and say burr. But do it one time on your own. I like how you're repeating it. B. You want me to do it first?
Yeah.
B.
Burr.
Watch how I do this. Down, up,
Oh,
and around.
okay.
B. B.
B.
What does it say all together?
Burr.
All right, let's do cull again. Ready?
Okay, so you can see here that the child was having a little troubles making her letters. So some of the things that the teacher was offering were to trace it, right? She was saying, watch what I do. She would say, my turn, or watch me. And she also offered a starting point for her, like when she was confused, where do I start? How do I make this letter again? She did that. And she also gave an auditory clue for the shape. And then, remember, she said, go down, come back up, and around. So she gave a verbal direction for how to make that shape. Repeated practice of this maps the sounds and letters together. And this is what we want to be able to do. And we want your child to be able to do this as quick as possible, right? One of the ways that I teach children explicitly how to make their letters is I follow some of the guidance from a program called Handwriting Without Tears. You don't need this entire program, but they have a great way of describing how to basically make these letters. And the first section they call the Magic C letters. You can find these posters and things like this all over the internet. But first we teach the child how to make a C. And you'll see underneath that they have the directions for this. The C can turn into an O. The the C can turn into an A, then the C can turn into a D, which really helps reversals. And this is what I do for my kids when I'm working with them. And I teach them, remember, when you want to make the letter D, C comes before D. So you have to make your C first, then you go up and down, and now you have a D. And this is just one of the ways that helps children stop the reversals of B and D. Because later they'll learn another section called dive down letters. And I suggest to parents when they're teaching their kids handwriting, instead of just throwing them a workbook and saying, trace this, I think doing something like this so that the child gets used to the directionality and how to begin making certain letters like this, that you teach them in an order sequentially like this. And then explicitly, remember, let's go back to that ladder of reading. We need to be more explicit with our instruction. So doing handwriting like this, excellent, and doing it with the sound dictation. So those are the things that I just wanted to share with you tonight. Once you do consistently and repeatedly, remember, let's think about all those repetitions that our students need to be able to store this in long-term memory. When you do these things consistently, you will see a lot of growth. And just like that researcher, the brain researcher said, once students have gotten this code, basically, what then they can do is start teaching themselves. All of a sudden, when you start tapping this chart, and I heard this from so many teachers and parents, oh my gosh, my kid just started looking at a word and they realized cat said cat, and they put it together. And they figured out that code through some self-teaching and doing that chart. I just wanted to invite you to come back tomorrow night, where Christy's going to take the basis of what I gave you tonight and teach you how you can play some games and do some wonderful things with your kids to make this a really fun experience for your kids, besides just reading, but making sure that they're going to be a great reader without any issues in school. Thank you so much to We Shall Read for sponsoring this literacy series tonight. If you're at all interested in doing any training for becoming, maybe you're a teacher and you want some brain-friendly reading training, we have a 30-hour self-paced asynchronous Orton Gillingham-based course. We Shall Read provides a scholarship opportunity, so the cost of that is only $125. Some of you may be interested in tutoring either for your own child or for other children, and we also have a 30-hour level course with mentoring that we offer as well. You can learn about any of these through brainfriendlyreading.org or weshallread.org. If you want to learn any other really cool games or activities or anything else, please join us on Facebook and Instagram at Brain Friendly Reading and We Shall Read, and you'll be able to get all sorts of ideas on how to help your young student become that rockstar reader that you want them to be.